Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to my channel for another Hot Toys 1/6 scale figure, unboxing and retro review. Today, we're going to be taking a look at both Ellen Ripley and Big Chap, based off their appearance in the first Alien movie. Now, if you're heading down to the description, why not hit that subscribe, bell notification icon, and join button, so you're notified as soon as more Alien content goes live on the channel. I want to preface this by saying I'm using the term review very lightly, for Big Chap at least, because he came out in 2009, and he's covered in rubber, so I'm going to be extremely careful when handling him. As for the box art, it's beautiful. We've got Big Chap's skull underneath this frosted plastic acrylic layer, which is meant to replicate the look of Big Chap's dome, and I am so here for it. It adds some depth and also some mystique to the image underneath. We've got Alien Big Chap up front, and some logos dotted around the place. Oh, this is very clever. The way the clear plastic wraps around the box but misses the sides, exposing all of this printed side head detailing with the ribbing and cabling. That's perfect for Big Chap, because his dome is only on the front of his head. All of this stuff should be exposed. Around the back, warnings, legal information, but no Hot Toy store locations. This was a little bit too early for that. Ooh, we've got a clear plastic window, but only in the shape of the Xenomorph, exposing the figure underneath. Then down below, Alien Big Chap. The funny thing is, I don't think they've updated their website since 2009. It definitely doesn't look like they have. Around the back, we've got his name once more, as well as the cast and crew responsible for making this piece. The name Big Chap fits because this figure is a big boy. He takes up almost the entire clam tray. First in-hand impressions for him? So far, so good. I'm loving the size, and for now, I'm not spotting any rubber degradation, but I guess we'll have to explore that a little bit more thoroughly throughout the course of the video. Okay, with Big Chap now out of the way, let's move on to Ripley. Her box is a lot smaller than Big Chap's, and that makes perfect sense. This is a normal 1/6 scale figure. She came out in 2017, so much newer than he is, and interestingly enough, 2017 was the same year my channel started, so this figure is the same age as my channel is. Up front, we've got an image of the figure herself, Alien through the middle, her name down below, as well as a glossy Weyland-Yutani logo in the background behind it. There's this subtle TV scanline effect over the top of all of the artwork, which is predominantly green to match the Alien aesthetic. The scan lines remind me of the old school looking screens on the Nostromo, and I reckon that's the vibe they were going for. Ah, Hot Toy store locations. So in 2017 they had 2 stores. They have more now, but less back in the day. Around the back here we've got this high gloss frame surrounding the warnings and legal info. So when light bounces off the surface, that frame does pop against the satin finish for everything else. That is some very vibrant green, and I think there's even more of it on the inside of the box. Underneath the slipcover, an open window showcasing Ripley, Jonesy, and the rest of their accessories. I see what they've done. The green on the side of the box wraps around to the back piece of artwork that's meant to represent one of the corridors in the Nostromo. We also have the cast and crew responsible for making this piece around the back. I've heard really good things about Ripley. I've spoken to Dean Knight at length about both Ripley and Big Chap, and yeah, let's just say I can't wait to build out an Alien collection centered around these 2 pieces. First in-hand impressions for her? So far, so good. I'm digging the subtle weathering on the outfit, and, of course, that head sculpt. What we're going to do now is get all of Ripley's and Big Chap's accessories laid out in the light box, and take a closer look at everything they come with. Well, almost everything, because Big Chap does come with a diorama backdrop, and we'll discuss that separately to the regular accessories. Starting off with their bases first. They may look like the exact same base, and for the most part, they are, except for when it comes to the crotch grabber. You see, Big Chap came out first, and they, I suppose, were really obsessed with the idea of making a diorama platform rather than a supportive base, so that's what they did. Visually speaking, it's gorgeous. I can't fault it. We've got the grate in the middle, it's a nice flat platform in the middle, the acid burn markings, some airbrush shading in certain places, the caution tape that's been weathered, and some lighter grey dry brushing over the top. But no nameplate and no crotch grabber. But for Ripley's version of the same base, yes nameplate, it says Ripley around the front on this little step section, and an adjustable crotch grabber. I might switch the bases around and cover up the nameplate with a bit of duct tape because out of the two figures, Ripley can stand fine. It's Big Chap that I'm worried about falling over. The way the base has been painted between the two is slightly different. Big Chap's is less weathered as compared to Ripley's. She's got more of this orange/brown airbrush shading in certain places. And there are some claw marks at the back on these two pipes. Don't get me wrong, those bases, top 5 diorama bases from Hot Toys for me easily. But Ripley's is the stronger of the two thanks to that crotch grabber. She also comes with some very scene-specific and beautifully detailed accessories. The motion tracker might be my favorite of the bunch. It's got these little hoses and cables sticking off it, a bunch of buttons up top, all individually painted and weathered. 2 screens, but I think that one is the readout for the micro changes in air density. There's a hole down the snoot or barrel, more cables around the front, a wash over the top, and some lighter grey dry brushing on that green finish. This is more so just a part of her outfit rather than being an accessory. It's a rubbery plastic multi-screened calculator watch done in glossy black with some orange paint on the inside for the padding. Best part about this is you can slide it over her left wrist peg, and now it's going to be completely hidden. That means you're only going to have one visible wrist peg. Damn you, Hot Toys, how can you include an accessory that looks this good, the flamethrower, and not give us a flame effect? They use these quite heavily in the first movie, and a flame effect? That would have been a no-brainer to me. The worst part about this is the barrel is closed, so you can't even grab someone else's flame effect and pop it onto the flamethrower. If you know a way to do that, please tell me in the comments, because I would love to have this thing with an actual flame sticking out the front of the barrel. We've got some separate rubbery cables. This one has been disconnected, but it's fine. I'll fix it later. Another one down below for the canisters. It's completely filthy with washers in the grill work and all these little greebly sections. Plus an actual fabric sling that is adjustable with this piece that you can slide up and down. Unfortunately, this little hook has broken on mine, but it holds in place securely enough for the sling to still be functional. Out of all the included accessories, it's Jonesy that's the most controversial of the bunch, or at least he was back in the day. Sculpt work wise, he's fine, like there's some individual hair strands, and we've got the tail curling up underneath him, and the fully sculpted and painted paw pads on the underside. But there's a nasty, ugly seam line at the base of the tail. This could have been a single piece of sculpted PVC plastic. There was no need to make the tail a separate piece like this. Still, on the base, at a distance, is Jonesy going to look good? Yeah, I think he will. This is a two-parter because Jonesy also comes with his space cat carrier. Was this always intended to be a cat carrier in universe? I don't know. It could be because we've got the breathy holes, the grill around the back, and then the front part has the clear windows and you can open the top of it. But why would they design space cat carriers? I've got no idea. Chances are this was meant for something else, and Ripley just grabbed it out of the cupboard where the spacesuits were stored and decided to use it to store Jonesy in. You can pop Jonesy actually inside the carrier if you so choose, and the inside is fully painted and weathered. That way you can have him just peeking through those clear windows. I wish he was facing forward. That way, if you had Big Chap looking down at him, Jonesy would have been looking up at Big Chap, not randomly looking at the side of the carrier. Oh, and this piece is painted in the same way as the motion tracker, meaning it looks fantastic. Lastly, for Ripley, a full array of hands, with a light layer of skin texture over the top. Nowadays, their hands look a lot more detailed than these do. The first set, 2 closed fists. Then we have a gripping hand for either the motion tracker or Jonesy's carrier, and a trigger finger hand for the flamethrower. Plus 2 open palm hands already installed on her right out of the box. Big Chap should have really come with some more accessories, like a dead face hugger or a chest burster or the skin of the chest burster as it's evolved into Big Chap. The whole evolution of Big Chap I would have liked to have seen in 1/6 scale. As it stands, all we get is a stand and some extra hands for him. They come with wrist pegs pre-installed, and they're bespoke wrist pegs specifically for Big Chap. This has caused a lot of issues over the years because if these break, you don't have any spares. Luckily, you can loosen and tighten the screws if you find that they're getting a little bit loose in his arms over time. So this is the first pair of hands that we have to look at. They're these curled up finger hands with some spiky nails on them, and they've got a really glossy, slick finish to them. Right out of the box, though, he comes wearing these suspiciously flat-looking hands. They're not flat. They're wired. Well, they are flat, but you know what I'm trying to say. You can pose the fingers. If you don't like the pre-posed hands, just go with these and make up your own gestures for Big Chap. What we're going to do now is take a look at his backdrop. Big Chap, big diorama backdrop. It is just printed on cardboard. It's still one of the largest diorama backdrops I've ever seen from them. It's going to set the scene so nicely with this foggy-looking Nostromo corridor. You can pop Big Chap in front of it, then Ripley in front of him. The cardboard they've used is relatively sturdy. It's still warping, so I'm going to have to try and straighten it out before I pop this in the collection. The base part of the backdrop is significantly thicker. It, too, is still warping. It's going to work still as a platform for the diorama base to lock it in place because you wedge the bottom part of this cardboard backdrop underneath it. I will try and straighten it out just because my OCD wants this to be as flat as possible. The way the front of this portion has been cut out mimics the front of Big Chap's base. So when you line them up correctly, it looks like one continuous diorama piece. Do I have room to accommodate this? Probably not. Am I going to find a way to make it work? Probably. Right, enough about the accessories, let's move on to the figures themselves. Standing straight up and down in the light box, no crazy poses or accessories or anything like that. This is one impressive looking figure. He's not perfect, there are inaccuracies. I'm not quite sure what they are, but they're there. Still, just standing there straight up and down, he smacks you across the face with presence. There is something to look at on every single millimeter of this figure. He's a feast for the eyes, and I mean that in the best way possible. I've been staring at him off camera for a while now, and I still keep noticing new little bits of detail work that impress me. Is he going to stand the test of time? Well, he's lasted this long, hasn't he? He came out in 2009, and the rubber on my copy still looks relatively intact. So, fingers crossed is what I'm trying to say. For a figure of this vintage, wow. Like, seriously well done, Hot Toys of 2017. Y'all nailed it. She might not be 100% perfect, but I'm willing to say she's at least 99% of the way there. The proportions look very solid. She fills out the outfit, which is slightly weathered and looks accurate to me. The forearms are well painted, but we'll touch on them in just a moment when we take her off the rotating turntable. And the head sculpt. The head sculpt, even from a distance, looks like a young Sigourney Weaver. They came a long way from when they first made Ripley to their latest version from 2017. I knew she was going to be good, but I was not prepared for this. Up close and personal, kicking things off with Ripley's head sculpt. While the paint applications might not be up to modern day 2024 Hot Toy standards, the sculpt itself has to be in the conversation for one of the best female Hot Toys head sculpts ever. The likeness to Sigourney I can see from literally every angle, and the slightly open mouth with the teeth showing. Some people didn't like that when she came out. I do like it. She makes this expression a lot in the movie. If you find that her neck isn't really all that visible, it's absolutely there, just spread the collar out and use the sculpted hair to pin it in position. That way the neck is a lot more visible. Speaking of the sculpted hair, the initial prototype for Ripley did have rooted hair, but I'm glad they went sculpted, especially for 2017 Hot Toys, because they were using that really cheap synthetic stuff, and I don't think it would have looked anywhere near as good as this does. It's a separate piece of plastic glued over the top of the sculpt, so you can remove it and then have the head sculpt rooted if you want to. But there's a lot of depth underneath the hair. You can see the individual strands casting shadows on her forehead. And there's layering at play. You can see these individual stepped pieces of rubbery hair that sit on top of other pieces to create the illusion of depth and, like I said, layering. I am considering having this head sculpt rooted because of how strong it is, but just weigh in down in the comments below. Do you think that's a fool's errand? Does she already look good? I'm curious to hear what you all have to say on that. Around the back, you've got these faux zippers in the cinched section, with this string dangling down below that is accurate. I've recently watched and then re-watched Alien. Yes, the back of the outfit is supposed to look like this, and it's also been cinched tight around her waist. I'm not sure if you can tell, but on the seams and the edges of certain bits of fabric for the jumpsuit, there's a bit of weathering. And Hot Toys back in the day, they would weather fabric no problem, but nowadays they get scared weathering fabric because it's not easy to get multiple pieces of fabric to look the same after production is complete. Because painting material, it seeps into the fabric differently from piece to piece. I'm happy with how this looks. Just a subtle layer of dirt and grime, nothing crazy. We've got the little patches that say USCSS Nostromo on either side. Then we've got the little ones around the front. The zipper for the jumpsuit is functional, and she does have the logo on her shirt, but that's never really going to be visible because I'm always going to have the jumpsuit done up like this. Another 2017 Hot Toys thing, there's a big ugly seam right down the front of her forearm, and while it's unfortunate, it doesn't ruin the look for me. They didn't sculpt any skin texture onto the surface of the arms, but they did paint some on there. There's that traditional Hot Toys speckling of brown and red on the base color for the skin tone, and that does, from a distance, make it look semi-realistic. Her watch covers up the wrist peg on the left side. On the right, there's nothing you can really do about it. It's always going to be visible. Coming down to her legs, I'm pleased to report that there's no padding underneath her jumpsuit for the legs, so that's going to be great for articulation. Her pockets around the front are not functional. I'm partial to this versus having an out-of-scale zipper like what we have up top, because if they were to make Ripley today, I think she would have rooted hair, she'd be an artisan release, and she'd have a fixed in-scale zipper on the jumpsuit, automatically just in the correct position, so that way we didn't have this big ugly one right around the front. It doesn't ruin the look, I don't think, but still something to be aware of. We've got some faux zippers also down below on her calves, but some real ones on the inside of the legs that you can undo, so you can flare out the bottom of the pants for that real 70s look if you so choose. Some of y'all may not know this, but most of y'all very likely do. These sneakers were custom made by Converse specifically for the production of the movie back in '79. Yes, they're based off just regular old white Converse high tops, but they've added some alien specific bits and pieces to them. We've got the extra eyelets around the front, the red stripe around the edge of the sole, and the added ribbed detail that sits around the front edge of the toe cap. I dig how they've sculpted the laces as though she's wrapped them around the high top portion of the shoe so they don't flare out too much and she'd get maybe a little bit of extra ankle support. There's a wash over the top to make them look dirty and grimy, and some sculpted tread on the underside with a wash in there as well. Oh, I am so nervous about handling this guy on camera. I'm going to be as quick as possible while still showing you all of the detail that there is to look at, and trust me, there is a lot of detail on this piece. The reason I'm so nervous is because his body, his outfit, if you want to call it that, is entirely made of soft, squishy rubber, and this is 2009 rubber, so it's not going to last forever. Luckily, right now, he still looks really good. There's a sheen to him. There's very little degradation. There's a couple of spots that look a bit sus, but for the most part, I think I managed to snag myself a good one. Let's discuss the head sculpt. Yes, people are going to be very quick to point out that this isn't accurate and something's not quite right. The mouth shouldn't hang open like this. I'm aware of all of it. I knew that stuff going in. But sometimes there's a difference, and there shouldn't be, but sometimes there is, between accuracy and resemblance. While he's not perfectly accurate, he does resemble Big Chap from the movie. Like, if you look at this piece, you're going to know exactly what this is. That is the Xenomorph. I like how you can see the skull through the dome, but it's slightly frosty. Apparently, with later batches, the domes were a lot clearer, but that's not super accurate. On set, Ridley Scott, he chose to go with the dome from H.R. Giger's design, and it was getting fogged up like this because of condensation. So giving it this frosted look and the gradient effect around the edge, that, interestingly enough, even though it wasn't the intended effect, is more movie accurate. Dean Knight warned me not to do this, but I'm going to. I want to see the inner jaw spring out just one time, only ever once, in this video with y'all for the first and only time ever. His mouth area is made of this squishy rubber, and these little sinewy bits, they break all the time if you're not careful. You see this little lever around the back? You move that forward, I'm pretty sure you can see what's happening, then the mouth springs open, might have to give it a bit of a hand, and the inner jaw sticks out. So it would look something like this if you're braver than I am and you decide to leave him with his inner mouth out long term. Most of the time in the movie, when Big Chap was lurking around the Nostromo in the air vents and whatnot, he was shrouded in shadows and darkness. We didn't get to see him on full display and admire all of this crazy design work on the what would be suit, but the creature design itself. In 1/6 scale, there's no hiding. You can see everything from the tubing on the head sculpt to the protrusions around the back. These are actually made of a sturdier plastic, same thing with the shoulder pads. This horizontal spinal column section on the inside of them, and the very nasty, ugly looking rib cage. This reminds me of the fingers of the face hugger. Maybe that was the intended effect, but I really don't want to touch it because that looks straight up gross. The arms are plugged in separately to the shoulders on ball joints. It's my preferred way of doing something like this because you can't even really tell that this is a separate piece anyway. There's a natural seam underneath the shoulder pads. That was a great way of hiding that extra bit of articulation. But then the arms are covered in that rubbery stuff. The elbows are notorious for cracking, so maybe use that elbow joint sparingly. The ribbing and hoses and how it weaves underneath what looks like musculature, it's a biomechanical looking design, and that's what I love about the Xenos. They did change slightly as we saw them evolve through the movies, but they've been relatively consistent with all of this extra ribbing detail. One thing that I didn't notice about Big Chap in the movie is that he's got these almost tiger stripe looking markings on him. The entire suit has this earthy brown green tone to it, and I thought that he was just black. So now seeing this guy in 1/6 scale might not be perfectly accurate, but it gives me a much better idea of what the real screen used costume looked like with these extra markings all over the place. Watch out for the tail. Even in 2009, when this guy was brand new, he was arriving from Hot Toys and Sideshow with a broken tail at the base right out of the box. Mine had a broken tail even though he was sealed. I managed to fix it, but fingers crossed you won't have to if you're mindful when you are trying to pose it. The way I fixed it was I got a picture frame nail, I cut off the head, I superheated it, I inserted it into the plastic core of the tail while it was still hot. Then I drilled a pilot hole into the plastic body underneath the rubbery outfit and used friction to push that nail in place, and now this thing is sturdy as. You probably wouldn't even be able to tell that he arrived broken. You really do need the tail to be sturdy because this is wired, and the aliens use their tails a lot in the movies. For dynamic posing, or in 1/6 scale, for some extra support because don't forget, his stand does not have a crotch grabber. So 3 points of contact for Big Chap, his tail and his 2 feet, might just be the way to go. I haven't decided yet how I'm going to pose his tail between his legs or curling around him. If you've got any ideas or if you know how best to pose it, weigh in down in the comments below. I am going to make sure it's got this natural curvature to it because I don't want any janky, harsh angles that would straight away throw off the organic look. Coming down to his legs, they go on forever. He's got really long legs. Around the front, the skin looks like it's split open to reveal this rib detailing in the hoses and cables. We've got some little knobbly bits sticking off his knees, and the spikes around the back of the ankles. The interesting thing about the ankle joints is, yes, they can get loose, but there's a screw in them. So as long as yours aren't broken, you can tighten up that screw, therefore tightening up his ankle pegs, and maybe that will help him stand a little bit better, along with using the tail as some extra support. He does have some quite long, spiky looking toenails, by the way. Back to the head sculpt for just a second. I want to mention the fact that Dean Knight actually glued his alien's mouth shut. I might do that because I'm never going to be able to use the inner jaw for fear of ruining these bits of sinewy, rubbery flesh on the outside. I'm also tempted to take some Molotow chrome paint and touch up his teeth because those are nowhere near as shiny as they're supposed to be. Before we move on, I wanted to try out Big Chap inside of his cardboard backdrop. And yes, I did say inside of because it wraps around the edges a little. It had to be as tall as it is because Big Chap is massive. If it was any shorter, his head would have been sticking up past the edge of the backdrop and it would have looked ridiculous. Luckily, it doesn't look ridiculous. In the correct lighting, this is gonna look bloody brilliant. For a quick side-by-side comparison, Big Chap towers over Ripley, accurately so. Sigourney Weaver is no slouch in the height department. In real life, she's 5'11". So that means the alien is probably well over 7 foot, right? I'm not 100% sure on the exact scaling between these two, but having literally just seen the movie twice now, in my mind's eye, picturing these two facing off against one another, this scaling looks about right. I can't believe how long it's taken me to get on board with Alien both as a franchise and in 1/6 scale with some figures. Oh yes, I had to do it. This is my custom jungle hunter using parts from Fugitive Predator Customs based on the classic Predator body. He's tall too, but he's nowhere near as tall as the Xeno is. Big Chap still towers over classic Pred. Going over articulation, let's start off with Big Chap. I'm going to be extremely careful with him because these rubber bodies, they're known to crack if you push the joints a little bit too far. It feels like it might want to go, and I do not want to give it a reason to. Starting off with his head sculpt, it's on a ball joint, so looking forward to there, looking up to there, swivel, and pivot side to side. His arms are on ball joints plugged in separately at the shoulders, so these you actually can move without damaging any rubber. Going forward and back, out to there, and because they're on ball joints, you get a little bit of swivel. Ratcheted double bend at the elbow going past 90, then for his wrist peg, it's a hinge and swivel. His torso crunches forward to there? That's way further than I was expecting. Going back to there, swivel, and pivot side to side. His legs go forward to there, that's as far as I'm going to push them. Going out to there, as far as I can tell, no swivel at the upper thigh. Ratcheted double bend at the knee, going just past 90. And then a hinge and swivel at the ankles. Good for forward and back and rotation, but if you want ankle tilt, you have to rotate that joint underneath the rubber outfit, and then it will go left and right. Oh, thank goodness that's over. Let's move on to Ripley. She's just on a standard 1/6 scale body, so this is going to be way easier than Big Chap was. Starting off with her head sculpt, a rubbery neck with a double ball peg inside of it, looking forward to there, heaps of range, going back to there, more than I was expecting given the sculpted hair, swivel and pivot side to side. Her arms will go up to there, full fabric outfit, nothing to get in the way, going forward and back. There's a butterfly joint at the shoulder that hinges up and down. Swivel at the bicep, double bend at the elbow going past 90, then for the wrist peg, it's a hinge and swivel. Her torso is restricted because it's covered in a rubbery overlay underneath the outfit, crunching forward, going back, swivel, and a little bit of pivot side to side. Her legs go forward to there, relatively unhindered, going out to there, swivel at the upper thigh, double bend at the knee, going past 90, and then a double ball peg for the ankles. Even though her chucks are high tops, they're flared out at the top, so we still get a decent range of motion going forward and back, swivel, and a little bit of ankle tilt. Moving on to the 3 cool and 3 annoying things. The first annoying thing is Big Chap is known for having notoriously weak ankles. Dude cannot stand well. But he doesn't have a crotch grabber on his base. This isn't even really a base. It's more so just a diorama style platform. It looks good, but it's not functional. The second annoying thing will be just going back and forth between Ripley and Big Chap is Jonesy. Why is there an ugly seam line for his tail and underneath his mouth? This could have easily been one sculpted piece of PVC plastic without any seam lines. The third annoying thing, and I apologize for focusing on Big Chap's Big Chap, but it's rubber degradation. You can see a little bit of it starting to rear its ugly head right on the front of Big Chap's crotch area. That's only going to get worse, unfortunately. Luckily, mine is in pretty good nick. There's still a decent level of shine to him. But when they made him, they knew full well that this rubber wasn't going to last because they'd already made multiple aliens before this guy and they disintegrated into nothing. The first cool thing is, aesthetically speaking, I reckon this was a perfect base mold. But it didn't have a crotch grabber, so functionality-wise, terrible. Luckily for both Ripley and the Alien Warrior, they kept the overall look and feel of the base, but they added some more shading here and there, and they've popped in a crotch grabber, so now we get both form and function. Second cool thing is Big Chap's got wired fingers, so if you don't like these pre-posed hands, you can manipulate the fingers and get them to look pretty much however you want them to. The third cool thing is the detail on Ripley's accessories. The world of Alien is this brutal, very lived in place, and everything has a surface layer of dirt and grime on it. These accessories perfectly capture that look in 1/6 scale. They're also super tactile with these rubbery hoses, buttons, and cables all over the place. Wrapping up on some retro Hot Toys alien goodness. Hot Toys cut their teeth in this industry making Xenomorphs and Predator figures. So it makes sense that they kept the ball rolling and they released more and more Xenomorphs until we eventually got Big Chap and Ellen Ripley. Big Chap came out in 2009. Let that sink in. This piece is very old, yet somehow he's still standing. The rubber actually looks surprisingly good. If you are planning on picking one up today, either get one sealed and have the seller snap some pictures of it behind the clear plastic window, or if you're buying used, just ensure the rubber isn't gone, because if it is, there's no amount of 303 that'll bring it back. Luckily, I got a good one, and overall, the figure, yes, is inaccurate. I'm still really happy with how he looks. He's got a ton of presence, and he's going to stand out in the brand new Alien part of my collection. As for Ellen Ripley, she's the standout of the two figures in this review. I didn't think that was going to be the case, because we're looking at Sigourney Weaver in a flight suit versus a Xenomorph. The massive, big, ugly Xenomorph. Still, Ripley takes the cake. In the movie, she was a badass, and in the subsequent movies, also a badass, so that always helps. I dig the character. But in 1/6 scale, a near perfect release for Hot Toys in 2017. Hot Toys nowadays, yes, they would do better. But I'm not about to sit here and complain that Ellen Ripley is not up to scratch, because she is. The proportions look solid, the outfit is slightly weathered, giving it that real worn, dusty, lived-in look that the suit had in the movie. The accessories are sensational, so no complaints there. And the head sculpt. The head sculpt is the real star of the show. It's Sigourney Weaver from every angle. The paint apps, while dated, still good. And the hair? I thought I wouldn't like the sculpted hair, but it works. I am tempted to get it rooted, we'll just have to wait and see. So at the end of this, chuffed with my first two Alien figures. I could have gone with some older pieces or a newer one with the Alien Warrior, but no, I picked these two because they're based off the first movie, and I thought we should start there. It just makes sense to me. That doesn't mean we're not going to be reviewing more Alien figures. And building our own. Stay tuned. There's going to be an upcoming episode of Build-A-Figure on something from Aliens. That's all I'm going to say on the matter. If you're heading down to the description, why not hit that subscribe, bell notification icon, and join button if you like the sound of seeing your name in the end credits of my reviews. Like, comment, and subscribe. We'll catch you in the next video.